President Jokowi and ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to thank you and the government of Indonesia and the people of Bali for your gracious hospitality. My last visit here to Bali was in 2013 for the APEC meeting. I'm happy to be back again, this time for my third Leaders Retreat with President Jokowi, and plus the ASEAN Leaders Gathering and the IMF World Bank annual meetings. I conveyed my condolences to President Jokowi on the Central Sulawesi earthquakes and the tsunami. And Singapore stands with Indonesia during this difficult time. We've deployed 2 RSAF aircraft to send humanitarian assistance and help with the rescue and recovery efforts. And many Singaporean organizations and NGOs have been actively fundraising to support the relief efforts. And we are confident that these affected areas and the population will make a quick and strong recovery under the President's leadership. We had a fruitful discussion with President Jokowi on the ways to deepen our cooperation between Singapore and Indonesia. Last year, we commemorated Rising 50 years of our diplomatic relations. Singapore continues to be Indonesia's largest investor, and we are amongst each other's top trading partners and top tourist sources and destinations. So there's good momentum going forward based on the mutual confidence and trust we've built up over the decades. We discussed many specific issues during our meeting. First, on the investment and digital economy. We witnessed the signing of the bilateral investment treaty earlier. Singapore is very happy with this because it will encourage greater flows of investments into Indonesia. We also concluded the MOU on Industry 4.0, which will create opportunities to learn from each other in response to the fourth industrial revolution. The Kendal Industrial Park, which the President touched on, has continued to progress with 43 companies committed and $500 million in investments, which will create more than 5,000 jobs. And there will be a new polytechnic built at the Kendal Industrial Park, which will welcome its first batch of students this month. And there's the Nongsa Digital Park, which is in Batam, which the 2 foreign ministers launched earlier this year, which will strengthen Batam's role as a digital bridge between Indonesia and Singapore. So these are things which we have already been doing. We discussed what more we could do. We discussed in particular the progress of the deliberations on our double taxation agreement update between Singapore and Indonesia. And I explained to the President why this was important, to bring it up to date, comparable to Indonesia's DTAs with other major economic partners, so that we would have the right infrastructure and incentives for business people on both sides to invest and to do business with one another. We also talked about possible incentives and rules which will encourage companies to invest in the Kendal Industrial Park and the Nongsa Digital Park, rules such as the minimum investment amounts, rules such as possible tax incentives. These are things which we hope Indonesia will be able to consider. On tourism cooperation, we've added new cruise itineraries, 3 new itineraries since our last retreat, and it should bring more than 50,000 visitors to Bintan, Surabaya, and North Bali this year. And the MOU, which is being signed today between Pelindo 3 and Star Cruises, will encourage more cruises and facilitate the upgrading of Celukan Bawang port in Bali, and explore the upgrading of other ports managed by Pelindo 3, such as Tanjung Priok in Surabaya and Surabaya. There will be more to come. For example, our tech incubator, Block 71, which is already in Jakarta, will expand into Bandung and Jogja, which will be launched later this month. And in fact, in Jakarta, more than 30 companies have been incubated at Block 71, and maybe Indonesia's next unicorn will come from Block 71. The President and I also discussed the external economic environment, the current uncertainties in the emerging markets and in the global financial markets have affected many financial markets around the world, including countries with sound economic foundations, like ASEAN countries and in particular Indonesia. To support the monetary and financial stability of our countries, we have tasked our two central banks, which means MAS on our side and Bank Indonesia on your side, to work out and conclude a bilateral financial arrangement soon. This will be a package which will comprise a bilateral local currency swap and also a US dollar repurchase agreement. And the cooperation in this arrangement will instill confidence among investors and enhance economic stability and development in the region. And the amount, as the President says, is 10 billion US dollars. Secondly, we are also talking about human resource development and promoting friendships and understanding and cooperation between our peoples. And we discussed a project to develop a fellowship program involving regional leaders from Indonesia, which will be called the Rising Fellowship. Rising, Republic Indonesia and Singapore, and we hope every year to welcome more than a dozen leaders, officials, promising young persons from Indonesia, not just from Jakarta, but also the provinces and the major cities, to come to Singapore, visit us, get to make friends, appreciate how we can work further together, what are the things which we can learn from each other. Thirdly, defense and security collaborations have grown from strength to strength. Both defense ministries are working together on an intelligence sharing facility based on the Our Eyes initiative, and our police force is working closely with Polri on counterterrorism and intelligence sharing. Finally, our cultural cooperation program, which was signed today, will lead to more cultural exchanges and joint showcases between both sides. So we've accomplished much in the last few years under President Joko Widodo's leadership. We can do much more together for the long-term benefit of our peoples. We wish Indonesia a successful hosting of the IMF World Bank annual meetings, as well as smooth legislative and presidential elections next year. Our cooperation will continue during the next few months, and I'm sure after the next few months, after the elections, they will pick up strength again and will strengthen and grow further in the years ahead. Thank you very much.